You spend years studying Spanish grammar in a classroom, memorizing every conjugation and irregular verb. But when you finally sit down at a cafe in Madrid to order a coffee, your mind goes completely blank. Researchers at the Department of New Teaching Methods found that traditional schooling fails because it treats language as a manual construction. It forces the brain to retrieve a rule and retrieve vocabulary before attempting to build a sentence, a process that is too slow for the speed of real life. Igor Shekhter, the author of the Emotional Functional Approach, argued that native speakers don't calculate rules. They focus on meaning, and the speech happens spontaneously at a subconscious level. Literacy and formal training are secondary to the primary human capability to simply speak. To bridge the gap between academic study and spontaneous speech, Shekhter replaced lectures with role-playing games called etudes. Modern technology has evolved this idea into its most immersive form, the massive, survival-based digital world of World of Warcraft. In this environment, fluency is no longer about passing exams. It's about engineering a psychological state where language becomes a necessary tool for survival. An etude works by shifting the learner's focus away from the words themselves and onto a practical, real-life objective. You aren't reciting phrases to a teacher. You are trying to get something done. Within the game, the survival instinct takes over. You need to buy a sword or hire a healer to survive an immediate threat. When the task is indirect, focusing on an action rather than a memorized list, vocabulary is absorbed naturally. Because the player is preoccupied with the outcome of the game, the paralyzing fear of making a mistake or performing the language for a grade disappears. When language is used as a functional tool to navigate a challenge, the brain processes and stores the information subconsciously without the friction of academic anxiety. However, total immersion has a major flaw. Dropping a beginner into high-level native conversation is often useless because the brain registers it as nothing more than background noise. To make the input comprehensible, specialized add-ons rewrite the game's complex text. Archaic dialogue is replaced with primitive grammar and short sentences, where the subject and the predicate are easy to identify. Quests reuse these same simple structures repeatedly, allowing the player to memorize verbs through context rather than rote study. As the player moves into more advanced regions, the complexity of the text scales up, eventually reaching an intermediate level. Fluency requires the message to be understood first. By pacing the complexity of every quest, the game acts as an automated tutor that ensures the player is never overwhelmed. There is also a biological component to this type of learning. Much like driving a car through heavy traffic, a low level of survival-based stress keeps the driver's attention at a heightened state. Navigating dangerous zones in the game triggers this same survival instinct. The player must remain alert to stay alive, keeping their cognitive systems fully engaged. When the combat ends and the player reaches a safe zone to speak with an NPC, the brain experiences a moment of quiet. In this lull, the information gathered during that heightened state is absorbed with much higher efficiency. This balance is fragile. In high-stress endgame raids, the panic takes over and the nervous system shuts down cognitive functions. When the stress is too high, the ability to process language flatlines to zero. By maintaining a Goldilocks zone of mild danger followed by periodic safety, the game creates a psychological environment tuned specifically for rapid acquisition. By the time a player reaches the level cap, hundreds of hours of passive absorption have already taken place. They naturally begin typing basic coordination phrases to other players, transitioning from a listener to an active communicator. This is where Shekhter's approach differs most from traditional methods. A wide foundation of speech is established first, and only then is grammar introduced as a capstone. Grammar doesn't build the language, it normalizes it. With a massive reservoir of practical experience already stored in the brain, traditional rules finally have a context. They become easy to absorb because they describe something the player already knows how to do. This forces us to reconsider what language learning actually is. It isn't an academic subject to be mastered in a vacuum. It's a natural human trait that emerges through necessity. When we combine comprehensible input with functional, survival-based tasks, virtual worlds become more than just entertainment. They become the most effective tool we have for achieving true fluency.